All right, in today's video, I'm going to be real and raw, but I need to put a disclaimer. This is for anybody who's ever struggled with any type of body dysmorphia or any kind of eating disordered or disordered eating patterns, like anorexia, bulimia. I am putting out a disclaimer that I am going to simply share my experience as somebody who binged. And I'm going to share my story of what I learned from my last binging episode, which happened on May 27th, 2014. That was my last binge ever. And so I am not sharing medical advice. I'm not telling you, I'm not diagnosing you. I'm simply sharing from my heart to be real and raw. And if you have any types of disordered eating patterns, meaning you hoard food, you binge food, you deny food, you work out to compensate for the food, please seek help because you don't have to struggle. You do not have to be alone in this phase of your life. And I know that when we talk about disordered eating in any fashion, there tends to be a lot of shame around it. And I just want to be real and raw with you to share my story. And so here's how it goes. I started disordered eating habits, binging, and a binge is literally defined as you eat an excessive amount of food. You just eat an excessive amount of food, and my binges would start with a cheat meal. And so I'll just take you back to the beginning when these binging episodes began for me. I had done some bodybuilding shows, and in my second show, that is when I realized that I had started. You were going to hear my dog now decide to scratch. I had done 2 bodybuilding shows. I competed in figure. Now, again, disclaimer, I'm not saying that these shows caused or triggered the binging pattern. I will simply tell you, though, following a meal plan for me, I already had predispositions of categorizing food as good and bad, and this led to disordered thought patterns with my food, putting moral labels on myself with my food choices, overcompensating with working out after consuming said bad food, restricting myself at my next meal because I had quote unquote overate. And so I started dieting at about 2011. In the year 2011, I started dieting. I did my first figure show in 2012. I did my second figure show in 2013. It was in 2013 where I realized that I was really putting an emphasis on the good and bad. I was really putting an emphasis on burning the calories. And really trying to pay attention to how many calories I was consuming. I'll do another video if you'd like, however, at another time. Just let me know in the comments about, like, do calories really matter? I can do another video on that, but I digress. And so I had started really categorizing food as good and bad, and it was next level. My second show, my calories had to get quite low, and I was doing a lot of cardio. I was doing a lot of cardio on the first show as well. Like, I'm just a curvier girl, and being able to get up on a stage, like, you got to be lean. I would have to send weekly check-ins. And again, I'm not putting blame on anybody else. This is an onus on myself. I think that true empowerment and growth comes from realizing where you stand in your own shadows and your own bullshit stories. And so I had a coach. I had a coach for both shows. They were different coaches. And I would need to submit my weekly photos in order to determine if I could have a quote unquote cheat meal. And so I would need to tell her what my meal was going to be, or she would tell me what it would be. And so I started really developing, like, the intensity of restriction was getting worse and worse. So I was eating all the quote unquote clean foods, the good foods, but I would want a banana sometimes. And I was told that was too high in sugars. And so I would start to really, I remember actually walking in the grocery store and just feeling like I was stuck. like I was a victim. Like I just remember, like I can feel that. I can take myself back to those moments, especially when I was like weeks out from the stage, from the competition, and just feeling like I'm stuck. Like, how did I get here? You know, looking at all the foods and being like, I can never enjoy this again. Or if I were to enjoy this, how much would I need to work out to make up for it? And so I competed in that second show not long after. So when I stepped on stage, I was 125. Not that weight matters. Again, disclaimer. You are not the number on the scale. But I stepped on stage, I was about 125. And I rebounded. And so a rebound is when your body becomes metabolically adapted and it just wants to bring you back to homeostasis. And so meaning my body did not feel comfortable at such low calories to maintain this weight. I ended up rebounding to 190 pounds within months. And that did a number on my self-esteem. The rebound happened due to the stories that I created and the food rules and phobias that I created around certain foods, around all food actually, what was good, what was not good. I found myself even bigger, right? Heavier. I felt more sluggish than I had ever in my life. And obviously I would beat myself up. I would punish myself with food. I would punish myself with exercising because I was punishing myself with food. Or I just had, when I talk about the what the hell effect, like that's literally that. You get to a place in your mind where you're just like, fuck it. Fuck it. What does it matter? Right? Instead of eating one cookie, I'm going to eat all 12 because who fucking cares, right? I remember being in that place. I remember actually coming off of my show and I used to mix peanut butter with coconut oil together and I would stand in front of a mirror and I would eat it and then I would just pick my body apart. Now again, I'm not saying that the shows caused this, but I am saying for me, seeing my body in such a altered state, it did a number on my mindset. It did a number on my mental, emotional view of myself. Like, and I've spoke about this so many times, like I spent more than half of my life hating my body, thinking there was something wrong with my body, feeling that I needed to shrink these thighs, feeling that, you know, why are my breasts so big? You know, what about the jiggle in the arms? Like, I remember just tearing it down, right? And I've always had a bubble butt. So, you know, I remember, again, more than half of my life wanting to shrink that, right? And so these patterns were already there prior to stepping on stage, which I thought at the time I was getting healthy until, you know, when you get down to about 8 to 6 weeks out, this is for me where I realized like, whoa, this is actually not that healthy because my calories had to get cut drastically and my cardio increased and all of the things. Now, if you have ever been in this world of bodybuilding, I know that there are many different ways to get to stage. And I'm just, again, sharing my experience. And so the last time that I binged, I stepped off of stage in 2013 and then my binges became incredibly worse. I would allow myself during my prep, obviously for the show, to have the cheat meal, but the cheat meal actually would turn into a cheat day or a cheat 2 days. Like, so I would put my cheat meal on the Friday night and then I found myself like wanting to eat foods that I never would have ate in the first place, like stuff that I wasn't even interested in prior to there's this restriction and the food rules that I had created around food. And so it became next level, like where I would, you know, put all the focus and energy on, I'm going to be so good all week, and then come cheat meal. And then I would just go to town for the whole weekend. And then come Monday morning, like on the weekends, I would have to still do my cardio. So I would be on the cardio machines trying to make up for what I had just done. But then go back home and be like, right? That compensatory effect, which I will share as well what that is. A compensatory effect is where your body is going to try to keep you alive. Your body is smarter than you. It knows that you need calories, you need carbs, you need fats, you need the protein, you need it all of these macronutrients as well as micronutrients in order to stay healthy and be at homeostasis. And so the compensatory effect kicks in when you start doing behaviors to modify and alter your body in any way. So example, doing a lot of HIIT training, like high intensity interval training, doing a lot of cardio, like running, rowing, like if you're sprinting, like all of these things, if you're continuously doing this as at the same time as decreasing calories, it becomes like a recipe for a disaster, basically, because your body's smarter than you and the compensatory effect will kick in where you're going to become hungrier. And so I would go to bed at night and I remember my husband being like, "Are you sure you're not hungry? Because your stomach is growling." And I would just convince myself like, no, I'm fine. Or I would eat my cucumber slices. I mean, I know all the tricks and I can really see how I got myself to this place. And so again, trigger warning, like when you start to see how you showed up in something, that's where you get to start to take your power back because you realize where you're at. And so my binges, which would start with a cheat meal, and then my mindset would just blow it out to a weekend, and then I would try to make up for it, and then definitely come Monday morning when I would be showing up to hit the weights at the gym, I would feel more fluffy, more puffy, bloated, sluggish, and then I would beat myself up. I would start to really like critique every inch of myself. And so this was difficult for me. But then fast forward, the show's done. So the show's done, and now I fall to like, wow, what do I do next? Because at that time, I didn't realize that there's a way to bring yourself back to maintenance calories instead of just gorging yourself like I did. And so after I stepped on stage and after I ballooned out, I found myself struggling hardcore. So what initially began as a cheat meal and then progressively turned into a cheat day, a cheat several days, which I mean, I know you can understand it was actually binging. I would actually binge so much that I would feel so uncomfortable in my skin, like it hurt. What began happening, again, based on these rules that I had created and these food phobias that, I bought into is, and again, I take complete ownership, right? And as something that had started to quote unquote be healthy and then turned not healthy, right? Anything extreme is not healthy. And so I would find myself in the middle of I would just find myself in my day-to-day life, I would get these, what I would call flickers. And those were the moments where I knew, oh shit, like I have a binge coming. And I would do everything I can to like resist, but I would find myself driving myself to the store because, as I said, I would consume things that I wouldn't normally consume and in excessive quantities. And so I would get in the car, I would drive to the corner store. They had like this dispensary kind of station, and I would grab the biggest plastic cup and I would proceed to fill that up with all of the sugar, like the candies, the chocolates, whatever it was, things I didn't even enjoy eating. Fill it up and I would get a second cup. At the end of my binge, it was pretty much that. Like at the end of my binging history, it was pretty much having 2 full ones. Then I would get in my car and I would drive and I would park somewhere, usually near the park, down by the river. And then I would just gorge. Like I ate the food so fast and in a way where I felt such shame. And it was just like, I was trying to get rid of the evidence in case anybody caught me. And then what I would do is I would get out of my car and I would go and throw away the evidence. I would just get rid of the evidence, put it in the trash can, whatever. It's gone, out of sight, out of mind. But I would still feel that I had fucked up. And then I would drive home and just try. I believe I acted like nothing. I will tell you what happened the last time I binged. Now, I've already shared that I didn't have a lot of that self-awareness. I wasn't paying attention to the chatter in the mind. And this is literally why I have this channel right now, is to showcase there's always chatter happening in the back of the mind, right? I realized that stepping on stage, I thought I would love myself, but I discovered that I hated myself even more. And then I realized like, whoa, it's not about the food or the body. There's a deeper story here. There's a deeper issue that I need to work through. And yeah, my last binge happened May 27th, 2014. So as I said, I competed in 2012, 2013. My binges got progressively worse after competing in 2013. And so much so, like and as I said, I would get these flickers and I would be like, nope, I'm not going to listen to it. I'm not going to listen to it. But then I would find myself just going. And as I was doing it, I could remember feeling like, well, I earned this, but I earned this. Like, I remember driving to the corner store being like, you earned this. You were good all week. You earned this. You deserve this. You've been through so much stress this week, or you need to celebrate. It's been a great week. Or, I could convince myself of anything. And then I would also have moments where I was like, you piece of shit. Like, you were such a piece of shit. You're such a trash human. Like, what the hell? Like, I was starting to really feel this inner war within myself. But that was the extent of my awareness. And so May 27, 2014, this is how it went. On the day prior to this, it was my youngest son's birthday. And there was a lot of friends over for the birthday. Like, he had his little friends over. There was cake, there was little goodie bags that had like the candy, all the sugary fun stuff. And thinking back now, I think I actually bought excess just to have. I remember that whole week trying to be so good, and even the morning of, like, going to the gym and getting a good workout in, just to make sure. And yeah, anywho, the 27th, I woke up and it was a day like any other. And then whatever little flicker happened, I found myself polishing off the cake. I found myself polishing off the extra little baggies that were left over. And then the flicker wouldn't stop. So I got in my car and I drove to the corner store and I did my normal routine. And then I came home. And I remember pulling into the driveway being furious. Like, I was so angry at myself. And then coming into the house, and I know that right before I left, I had mentioned to the kids, like, you each have to do your chores, blah, blah, blah. And I remember coming home and it was just like all that anger and that energy that I had inside towards me, I just projected it onto them. My youngest had asked, like, hey, is there any cake left? And I had a moment where I realized, like, not at that time, obviously, but I lost it. I lost my shit. I remember, like, storming through the house being like, I'm gonna have to do everything myself. And that whole, like, martyrdom energy, the victim energy. And I mean, as moms, I know that we all go through this at times. Or if you're a parent, you probably go through this at times where you question, like, am I even a good parent? Like, am I scarring my kids? Am I doing it right? And at that moment, I was just like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like, I have good kids and here I am, like, being such a bitch. And I just remember looking at my youngest's face and just being so disappointed in myself that I just decided to get back in the car and I said, I'll be back. I just have to go run an errand. And really all I did was I drove. I parked the car. I had such a release of the shame, the guilt, the pressure. And then it was in that moment that I had, like, this little light bulb, because I was in the middle of feeling like, oh, I'm a shit person. And, why am I doing this? And then, this little minute light bulb went off where it was like, you blew up at your kids because you were angry at yourself. So it was a projection of energy onto them instead of taking that and using it to do the inner work within myself. And then I just realized, like, all the previous binges, I would show up like that. I would be angry, I would be irritable, had no patience. And it was just like I saw moment after moment after moment in my mind. And I grew up in a family that, at the time, kids should be seen and not heard. And I vowed that I would never raise my own family like that. I would never do that. And so I realized, like, even though I didn't hit them, my words and the choice of how I said things could hurt them. And it was in that moment that I realized, like, shit, I got some work to do. And so I drove home and I apologized, but this time it was different. I mean, all the other times I would apologize, but this time it was different. It was more meaningful because I explained to them that the anger that I had and the frustrations I had absolutely nothing to do with them, that it was all things that I needed to work out with myself, work through within myself, and that I was going to do the work I needed to get help. And so what I did is I hired another coach. And this coach the reason I hired her is because she was really at the time promoting healthier lifestyles by using If It Fits Your Macros. And so her name is Sohi. And I worked with her for several months in order to understand, like, I didn't need to follow a strict, rigid meal plan, that I could begin to understand macronutrients and the importance of each. And I worked with her for several months. And then after working with her, I began my journey of furthering my own education, and I studied precision nutrition level 1 and level 2. And I began experimenting on myself. I began really catching my thoughts before anything happened. And I stopped paying attention to the flickers. I'm actually going to share more videos on like how I stopped binging, what to do if you ever catch yourself binging. Like, I'm going to share more videos, so stay tuned for those. Basically, I just wanted to be real and raw and share the journey that brought me to where I am today. It was a lot. And I have never binged since. Now, when I say binge, I mean consume an excessive amount of calories in short periods of time or extended periods of time. Like I would literally keep eating even though I was not hungry anymore. Does that mean that I don't overeat sometimes or overindulge sometimes? No, obviously, like there's no, like I eat like normal humans do. Sometimes we eat to fill an emotional need. Sometimes we eat, you know, to indulge a little bit. But to binge the way that I did, I haven't done that since May 27th, 2014. And so, yeah, stick around. Again, like, this video is not to diagnose anybody, but this video is to let you know, if you are struggling in hell like I was, to please go get help and to speak to those you love, to let them know. Like, my husband had no idea the hell that I found myself in. He had no idea. And I was able to come clean with my friends and come clean with my husband and even with my kids, to just be like, you know, food is not bad. Like, there's a pleasure component as well as a nutrition component. And I just really wanted to share this video with you today. And if you want to see more content like that, make sure you hit the like button so that I know you enjoyed it. And if you'll hit the notification bell, you'll know when I drop more, because as I said, I'm going to share in the next videos how I stopped binging and what I did to work through binging. Like, I'm going to share tips on what to do if you ever find yourself in the midst of a binge and other things like that. So thank you for being here. As always, be brave, be bold, be you.